The building was old, gray, and tired, much like the people who entered it. Locals called the courthouse Manila, not because of its location, but because it had become a city of quiet suffering, where poor souls gathered with broken dreams, much like the forgotten corners of the world. Outside, Dublin's rain fell relentlessly, soaking the cracked steps and the worn shoes of those who had nowhere else to go. Aileen stood at the entrance, clutching a thin folder that held her divorce papers. Her coat was borrowed, too large for her fragile frame, hanging loosely to hide the truth beneath it. Inside her belly, a child stirred softly, 7 months of life she had told no one about. Hunger, cold nights, and fear had taught her silence. Poverty had stripped her of pride, but not of dignity. She inhaled deeply and stepped inside. Across the room stood Sean, her husband. His shoulders were slumped, his face hollow from years of unpaid bills, skipped meals, and endless labor that never seemed to lift them out of misery. To him, today meant relief. An end. A chance to breathe without the weight of failure. He avoided looking at her, staring instead at the stained wooden floor. The judges entered slowly. They were used to sorrow, but something about this case felt heavier. One judge noticed Eileen's trembling hands. Another caught the way she leaned slightly backward, as if protecting herself. Their eyes followed her carefully, unease settling in their chests. The room fell silent. Aileen took her seat, her heart pounding louder than the rain outside. She wasn't just ending a marriage, she was standing at the edge of a truth that could shatter everything. Sean shifted uncomfortably, unaware that his life was seconds away from freezing in time. No one cried yet, but Manila was already holding its breath. The courtroom clock ticked loudly, each second echoing like a countdown. Papers were placed neatly on the table, their edges sharp and unforgiving. To the judges, this was procedure. To Aileen, it felt like a blade pressing against her chest. Sean reached for the pen without looking at her. His hands were rough, stained from years of hard labor that never paid enough. He signed quickly, as if speed could erase the past. The cold rooms, the unpaid rent, the nights they went to sleep hungry. When he pushed the papers forward, his voice was flat. "I'm ready," he said. Aileen swallowed hard. Her fingers hovered over the pen, shaking. Sweat formed on her forehead despite the cold room. One judge leaned forward, noticing the strain in her face. Another judge exchanged a quiet glance, sensing something was wrong. Slowly, Aileen stood up. The movement caused her coat to fall open. For a split second, the world went silent. Then the truth appeared. A round, unmistakable belly beneath the thin fabric of her dress. 7 months of life, hidden from everyone. A sharp gasp tore through the room. One judge stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. Another covered her mouth, tears instantly filling her eyes. The pen slipped from Sean's fingers and hit the ground with a hollow sound. He looked up. His face drained of color as his eyes locked onto Eileen's stomach. His body froze, as if his soul had left him behind. "No," he whispered, the word barely audible. His knees buckled, and he grabbed the table to steady himself. Eileen's tears finally fell. She wrapped her arms around herself, ashamed and afraid, her voice breaking. "I didn't know how to tell you," she cried. "We had nothing. I was scared." The judges were no longer distant figures of law. Their eyes were wet. One wiped her cheeks openly, her hands shaking. The courtroom staff stood motionless, stunned. Time had stopped in Manila. And nothing would ever be the same again. The courtroom no longer felt cold. It felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were listening. No one spoke for several seconds after the truth was revealed. Even the rain outside seemed to soften, tapping gently against the windows, giving space for what came next. Aileen finally broke the silence. Her voice trembled as she spoke, each word dragged out by years of fear. She told them about the nights she slept hungry so the baby could grow. About hiding the pregnancy beneath loose clothes while cleaning offices for spare coins. About the landlord's threats and the eviction notice folded inside her pocket. Poverty in Ireland had not just emptied their home, it had emptied her sense of safety. "I didn't hide the baby because I didn't love him," she sobbed. "I hid him because I didn't want him to be born into shame." Her legs gave way, and she sank back into the chair, clutching her belly. Sean was crying openly now. His chest heaved as guilt crushed him. He admitted he felt like a failure, unable to provide, unable to protect his family. "I thought leaving was mercy," he said through tears. "I didn't know I was abandoning my own child." One judge leaned forward, tears streaming freely. Another judge removed her glasses, hands shaking as she pressed them against her lips. Their authority dissolved into raw humanity. They were not just judges anymore, they were witnesses to a tragedy carved by poverty. The senior judge spoke softly, her voice breaking. She asked about medical care, about shelter, about how Aileen had survived alone. Each answer tightened the room with emotion. Court staff quietly wiped their eyes. Even Sean's lawyer looked down, unable to meet anyone's gaze. In Manila, truth had finally replaced silence. This was no longer a case of divorce. It was a cry for dignity, love, and survival. And the judges felt every heartbeat of it. The judges requested a short recess, but no one truly left the moment behind. When they returned, their faces were different, eyes red, expressions softened by something deeper than law. The courtroom of Manila had transformed into a place where rules bowed to humanity. The senior judge stood slowly, her voice unsteady. She admitted that in all her years on the bench, she had rarely witnessed pain this raw. "Poverty," she said, fighting tears, "does not erase responsibility, but it does explain despair." Her words trembled, and she paused to wipe her cheeks as the entire room watched in silence. Sean rose from his seat and, without thinking, stepped forward. He dropped to his knees in front of Aileen, ignoring the formality of the court. His shoulders shook violently as he begged for forgiveness. "I was blind," he cried. "I let my fear make me cruel. Please, don't let our child pay for my mistakes." Aileen covered her face, sobbing uncontrollably. Years of hurt, hunger, and loneliness poured out in that moment. She reached for her belly, torn between anger and love. The judges watched, unable to remain detached. One judge openly cried, her hands clasped tightly as if praying. Another whispered, "This is breaking my heart." The court was silent except for tears. After a long pause, the senior judge spoke again. She announced that the divorce would be temporarily suspended. The decision wasn't final, but neither was their story. She urged counseling, social support, and immediate assistance for the unborn child. Her voice cracked on the last sentence. For the first time, hope entered Manila. The law had stepped aside, and compassion had taken the stand. The courtroom slowly emptied, but no one rushed to leave. It felt wrong to walk away from something so human. The heavy doors of Manila closed behind the judges, yet their presence lingered like a quiet blessing. Outside, the rain had stopped. A soft light broke through the gray Dublin sky, reflecting off wet streets and broken pavements. Aileen stood near the steps, exhausted, one hand resting protectively on her belly. Her tears had dried, but her eyes were swollen, marked by years of silent suffering. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She only knew she was no longer alone. Sean approached slowly, unsure if he had the right. His face was red, eyes hollow but honest. He knelt in front of her, not out of desperation now, but humility. Gently, he placed his trembling hand on her stomach. The baby moved. Sean broke down again. "I felt it," he whispered, tears falling freely. "Our child, he's real. I won't run anymore." Eileen's breath caught. After everything, hunger, betrayal, fear, this small moment cracked her walls. She nodded slowly, not forgiving, but allowing hope to breathe. From a courthouse window above, the judges watched quietly. One judge pressed a hand to the glass, tears slipping down her face. Another bowed her head, whispering a prayer for the unborn life. They had judged thousands of cases, but Manila would stay with them forever. This was not a perfect ending. Poverty still waited, struggles still remained, but something had changed. Love, once buried under fear, had found its way back to the surface. In a city of broken vows, Manila became a place of second chances.